Hi, I'm Neil Saunders and welcome to this week's edition of Retail Perspectives. This week I wanted to give you an update from our confidence tracker, which we run on a monthly basis to understand how consumers in retail are feeling and how they're behaving. It's quite good news again this month because we have more people who think the economy is going to get better over the next 6 months compared to those who say it's going to get worse. It's still quite finely balanced though. At the moment we've got about 22.7% of consumers who say, well, over the next 6 months things will get worse, and we've got about 24% just over of people who say things will get better. So on balance we've got about 1.4% or percentage points who think things will get better. Now the rest of the people are somewhere in the middle. They think things will remain about the same. But although that's quite a shallow majority, actually, when you compare it to last year, rather than being plus 1.4, the balance was actually minus 43. So you can see that in a year we have moved a very long way and we've now moved into positive territory. And we've actually been in positive territory for economic confidence for the whole of this year. So this is the third month in a row now for the March figures where we've had positive views on the economy. Now interestingly, although that's quite good, there are some signs that the consumer is starting to worry, and they're worrying about some very specific things. The first thing they're starting to worry about really is interest rates, because this month we found that 32% of people, almost 33% of people, think that over the next 6 months interest rates will start to rise. Now they may not, of course, this is consumer perception, but the fact consumers feel that way actually is concerning because it means that those consumers who do think rates will rise are starting to take some action, maybe to mitigate the price increases they'll see in their mortgage or their loans or their credit card bills. Now interestingly, if you look at this time last year, about 20% of people thought interest rates would rise. So actually there has been a big leap from 20% to the almost 33% that we've got this month. Now what's quite interesting is many of those who feel interest rates will rise actually are starting to save more. They say that they're putting more of their disposable income into bank accounts or into ISAs to save a little bit of money. And some of that, when you speak to them, is driven by this fear of interest rate rises and a desire to put a little bit of a nest egg or a little bit of a contingency aside in case they do find themselves having to make more for their monthly payments. Now that's a very sensible and prudent thing to do, but as far as retail is concerned, it's perhaps not a great thing because it means that rather than going out and spending some of the surplus cash, people are putting it to one side and saving it for a rainy day. So current expenditure on retail from those people is probably a little bit down. The other thing that we've seen this month, which is quite interesting, just compared to last month, is there have been a decline in the number of people who say that now is a good time to either make a major purchase, which involves something like a car or a house extension, and there's also been a decline in the number of people who say now is a good time to make a big ticket purchase, which is something that's still fairly expensive but not quite as expensive as a car, so something like a television or a stereo or a piece of expensive electronic equipment. Both of those have slipped on the month, so the major expenditure, that's down by 2.8 percentage points, and the big expenditure is down by 4 percentage points. So they're not major slips, but in a month it's quite a way down. And actually some of that again is driven by this fear of interest rates, because of course some of these things, big ticket and major expenditure, would be driven by loans or putting on credit cards, and people fear that the interest rates may go up on those things. So actually this fear of interest rates, whether it be irrational or not, is actually starting to shift some consumer behaviour. And actually, as we've said before in this segment, the rise in interest rates over the long term is one of the major threats to the recovery, because actually it's going to take quite a lot of spending power away from the consumer, even if the rise is quite shallow. Now, we don't think interest rates are actually going to rise until next year, but it's concerning that the consumer doesn't necessarily concord with that, and that there are an increasing number of people who feel that interest rates will go up, because that feeling, we think, over the rest of this year has the potential to deplete retail expenditure growth, not by an enormous amount, but it will certainly take some of the shine off retail that otherwise could have gone into the till if people felt a little bit more confident in terms of spending.